I know it's only June, but the experts have already goofed. We've sifted through Fantasy Pros expert consensus rankings, and we have found the 6 wide receivers they have ranked completely wrong. We're going to tell you why we disagree with these rankings, either in favor of some of these players or not in favor of these players. And Ty, before we dive into the full list, I do have to give the disclaimer to all the people watching this video. If you subscribe to our channel, no, we will not be talking about Zay Flowers in this video, because all we do is talk about how high Zay Flowers is ranked and why it's completely wrong. So for the content's sake, we're not going to talk about Zay Flowers, because you've already heard us not sing the praises of Zay Flowers this offseason. But you're not going to sing the praises, I'm guessing, of Jaxon Smith-Njigba, who's all the way up at wide receiver 12 for Fantasy Pros.
Yeah, we're starting off on a bit of a sour note, and I feel like I need to start by saying we like JSN. We see a lot of opportunity for him this year.
Yeah.
Going into year 3, we're coming off of a year with 100 receptions, which was 7th of all wide receivers. We saw 137 targets, which was 12th of all wide receivers. 10th in receiving yards. Like, last year was a sneaky good year for JSN, despite what was going on in Seattle last year. And now Clint Kubiak is coming over from New Orleans. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett are out of town. So the door's wide open. Like, we like JSN. But the issue here is perceived cost. He's a top 12 wide receiver right now. And he's never finished inside the top 20 in points per game in his first 2 years. Can he finish as a top 12 wide receiver in points per game this year? Yes, he can. We kind of expect it to happen. But you know who else can? T. Higgins, Mike Evans, Rashee Rice, Devontae Adams even.
Yeah.
Like, all of those guys can finish inside the top 12 as well, but they're ranked behind JSN. So again, we like the player. We're excited for what this year could entail, what this year has in store. But already valuing him as a top 12 wide receiver when there are players ranked after him with that same upside, I don't want to say is drafting malpractice, but it's not the best way to go about your drafts, because you're not capitalizing on value. We like JSN, but the cost is just not as, we don't like that as much.
So I'll maybe come to the defense of JSN here a little bit, just because I feel like he's sitting at the top of this big tier, right? Tier 3, Drake London, Ladd McConkey. Personally, I would have them separate from a Jaxon Smith-Njigba, T. Higgins, but he's kind of a part of this big tier of JSN, T. Higgins, Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, Garrett Wilson, Terry McLaurin, Devontae Adams, Rashee Rice, where you could put any one of them at the top of this tier, and I would probably say, hey, might be a little rich for my blood. T. Higgins is probably the only one I wouldn't say that with, because we know what he can do with Joe Burrow. That's kind of my first defense of JSN. Now, on the flip side, though, who's to say Sam Darnold's going to succeed in Seattle? It's not like this team went out and massively upgraded their offensive line. Their offensive line got better. Grayzable is a great addition to this offensive line. But it's not what the Minnesota Vikings did this offseason. Will Sam Darnold still be able to thrive under a non-quarterback whispering coach? Will Clint Kubiak be able to know how to give Sam Darnold enough time to actually launch the ball downfield like he'll want him to if his offense looks anything like it did in New Orleans last year? Those are the questions I have around JSN. So while I think he kind of drew the short end of the stick here in the rankings of, well, he's just the top of a mega tier, therefore by default he's probably not the best value, I also think it's fair to say there's still plenty of questions here with the Seattle offense.
Yeah, I have yet to run into somebody that has expressed full confidence in that the Seattle offense will be able to bounce back from last year. And I think it's not a stretch to say, maybe this is just flat out wrong, but Geno Smith, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, JSN with the run game last year is a better group of players than you have right now with Sam Darnold and JSN, Cooper Kupp, and then the run game as well. So,
and Jake Bobo and Torrey Horton and
Yeah, how dare I forget Marquez
Whoever else you want to throw
Valdez-Scantling?
on the outside when
My
JSN and
fault.
Cooper Kupp are trading ones and twos in the slot.
Yeah, my bad. My bad on that one. But I again, I think you brought up a good point, is that JSN does have some substantial downside that we just don't want to talk about because he is a young and exciting player. But it is there. And to not acknowledge it, it could set you up for failure.
And that's all this is, just acknowledging it, because JSN is also a phenomenal young player in the NFL who has a tremendous amount of upside, who could absolutely meet this mark of wide receiver 12 this year. It's like we said, we're just evaluating all the context that goes into this and saying, yeah, but you know what? He might actually be closer to
You know what I
15,
just noticed?
17 than he is to 10 and 12. Now, before we move on to the next player, if you're already starting to prep for your fantasy football leagues this year, which if you're watching this video, obviously you're doing and it's the right thing, but also this is the place you want to be this offseason. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell as well, so you know when all of our newest content is up. If you enjoy fantasy football content like this, we are posting multiple times during the week to help you beat your friends at fantasy football this year. We love fantasy football just as much as you do. So we are creators who love the game, making content for other people who love the game just as much as we do. So make sure you stick around all off season long to hear what we have to say about all these players you should or should not be drafting. Rashee Rice, though, is a player that I think you absolutely should be drafting this year. And the wide receiver 19 to me is just it's flat out too low. Okay. And I get why the experts would keep Rashee Rice down around this wide receiver 18, wide receiver 20 range, right? Like he's coming off his PCL, LCL injuries from last year. You have the looming legal situation as well, but neither of those really seem to be a concern at all. Rice is already out on the field practicing, and the court system is literally moving at a snail's pace right now. So any suspension at this point seems to be pushed off till 2026. Personnel wise, I mean, the Chiefs have just been addicted over the last couple of years, targeting the middle of the field in that like 6 to 12 yard range, right? They used to be the team that took the top off of defenses with Tyreek Hill, right? But now the teams that started playing too high safety, they said, fine, we'll dink and dunk and be one of the most boring offenses to watch in the NFL and just hammer that intermediate portion of the field. And that is where Rashee Rice has been living. He drew last season before he was injured a 32% target share, okay, to start the season while averaging nearly 100 yards and 17 and a half fantasy points per game. Like those are top 10 numbers. And I know you have Xavier Worthy entering his second year as well, but Ty, we've already talked about it this offseason. These dudes play in different parts of the field. Xavier Worthy's on the sideline. Rashee Rice, as I've said multiple times already, he's playing the middle intermediate portion of the field, that 6 to 12 yard range, right in the heart of the defense. So while I understand there's some uncertainty baked in here, like just look at the nature of this offense and what areas of the field they target. Like to me, Rashee Rice should be closer to the wide receiver 14 to 16 range than the wide receiver 18 to 20 range.
Totally agree with that. And currently the drafters over on Underdog agree with that, because Rashee Rice has been one of the highest risers in wide receivers from
All the
this
way up to
kind
14
of
from 19.
Yeah, like people are buying in on Rashee Rice. And you brought up the point about the injury and the slow start. That's my biggest concern. But at the same time, at the end of the season, we may look back on it and say, like, well, that didn't really matter because he's, absolutely dominating. And yes, you do need to understand and contextualize as well. Xavier Worthy is a piece of this offense now. Travis Kelce has been, will be a piece of this offense. But there is still a lot to go around in this Chiefs offense. And it wouldn't surprise us if Rashee Rice is the lead target getter in this offense. Isn't the more, I don't want to say more dynamic, because we're talking about Xavier Worthy, Mr. Design Touch and downfield guy.
Xavier Worthy is explosive.
Correct. There's the word. That's the better word to use.
Correct.
Rashee Rice is going to be the volume guy here. And at this price, again, I think you can make a similar argument to what we were saying with JSN, where the cost is expensive. We expect it to happen. I'll be honest, I will be much happier if I can wait in my drafts for when Rashee Rice is going a full round later with that same kind of top 12 upside. That's ultimately how you can win your fantasy drafts, but then your leagues as well. And I don't want to make it sound like it's a guarantee that Rashee Rice is a top 12 guy. But the way that this team, I'm just saying, like, Rashee Rice could be the sneaky league winner here. And people will get overly concerned about the knee and the suspension, the legal mat, all that stuff. I'm just going to take the guy that's going to be utilized the most in his offense.
Pick a player on an offense in this range that you actually think could be that true wide receiver 12. Who has the best chance of actually finishing as that wide receiver 12? We brought up all the names early with JSN, right? You have JSN at 12, T. Higgins, Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, Garrett Wilson, Terry McLaurin, Devontae Adams, Rashee Rice. Pick one in their offense. Who's most likely? Which offense is most likely to get their player to the wide receiver 12 this year? For me, it's Rashee Rice, no question.
Yeah, I
think you could throw in Devontae Adams as like the runner up there, but you have Puka Nacua there. Rashee Rice is the dog. He is the number one there.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And I just don't trust again, you can make the case of, well, Mike Evans is the one, Garrett Wilson's the one. Those offenses aren't as good as the Kansas City Chiefs. They don't have Andy Reid directing traffic there. To me, it's just like I saw it with Rashee Rice. I saw it with my own two eyes last year. I have less questions than I do a lot of the other guys in this range. Like, he's the one guy who I think absolutely at 19, even if it is a slow start, what if Rashee Rice starts as like the wide receiver 28 through the first 3-4 weeks of the season, but then closes out the last 12 weeks of the season as like the wide receiver 5 overall? Like, do you know what that does over the back half of the season? Like, on the season, Rashee Rice is going to be a top 10 wide receiver if that's what happens. And again, I'm just forecasting, but like, there's not many other. I saw it with my own two eyes last year. Travis Kelce isn't getting any younger. I'm not too worried about that. So I digress. Rashee Rice is one of the players that you and I both really like in this range, especially when Fantasy Pros has him at wide receiver 19. And if it's really just injury concern, or not injury, if it's really injury concern, right? Because the legal stuff is going to be pushed off. If it's really just injury, I think once Rashee Rice is back and fully healthy, it's game over for the league. Mm-hmm. We'll transition though. Another small slot guy here, Khalil Shakir, comes in at wide receiver 38. Ty, is this ranking too low or too high for you?
This one's a little too high for me.
Oh, too high. Fascinating.
This one is too high for me. And okay. I understand it's the Buffalo Bills wide receiver 1 heading into the season, because we're looking at like Josh Palmer and Keon Coleman, and then the kind of failed tight end experiment with Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. I get it. The dude led the team in target share after the Amari Cooper trade. He was top 30 in total targets of all pass catchers in that stretch from week 7 to 18. So it's a pretty good mark to have. But we do need to keep this in perspective, okay? Because while leading the Bills in targets is great, 4 touchdowns on the year is not. 2 touchdowns in that week 7 to 18 stretch is not good. When he was inside the top 25 in targets, again, in that 7 to 18 stretch, he was wide receiver 39 in points per game. So not saying that there's a direct correlation between how he finished last year and where his ranking is right now. But we need to keep it realistic and understand that there's better upside after Khalil Shakir here. It's a very similar argument to JSN. I mean, we're looking at Deebo Samuel. We're looking at Juwan Jennings, Stephon Diggs, Ricky Pearsall. All of those guys have, I would say, more opportunity in their offenses and more upside. And the facade of the Buffalo Bills wide receiver 1 is intriguing. I'm not going to deny that, but keeping it in perspective, targets don't really get you anywhere. Yards and touchdowns do, and that's just not what Khalil Shakir racks up. So you can like the player, but I'm going to find myself taking guys with the same kind of upside again later than a guy like Khalil Shakir.
Can I ask a reckless question I know the answer to?
Oh, go ahead.
What's the difference between Khalil Shakir and Zay Flowers? I'm halfway serious.
There isn't.
So that's why I'm like, I'm okay with this ranking. If anything, obviously we talk about Jose Flowers as too. He's wide receiver 23 in Fantasy Pros. That blows my mind. It blows my mind that we can rank him there in half PPR formats when Lamar Jackson just had an MVP caliber season and he's due for regression. And Zay Flowers finished as the wide receiver 28. Let me fact check myself on that. It wasn't the wide receiver 28. He was the wide receiver 24. Excuse me. Khalil Shakir, to me, is Zay Flowers who doesn't get the first 3 targets. That's what Khalil Shakir is to me. So to see him at 38, to see him next to Rome Odunze, first of all, is stupid. Fantasy Pro, shame on you. Shame on
you. And Tet one spot ahead of that.
Shame on you. But Khalil Shakir at 38, I'm kind of okay with because I still know he's going to be the one for this offense. I'm still going to guess he's going to get, what do I have him statted out in my projections for right now? I have him earning right around a 21.5% target share for this team, which based on the projections I have is still only like 113 targets this year. But he and Zay Flowers are like neck and neck in my rankings because I just see them so similarly. So I'm kind of okay with 38 here. I get if you want to target higher upside guys, but like, hey, look, if you're willing to draft Zay Flowers, I'm of the camp this year where why draft Zay Flowers at wide receiver 25 when you can draft Khalil Shakir at wide receiver 38. That's just kind of the camp I'm in this year. Because you even look at it at the end of last season, in terms of a full season, their fantasy points per game, Zay Flowers, wide receiver 36, 10.1 fantasy points per game. Khalil Shakir, the wide receiver 43, 9.6 fantasy points per game. Only half a point difference between the two.
I think we can also say, I would say there is a bit of Zay Flowers in this. There's also a bit of Jaden Reed in this for me. We've talked about how Jaden Reed just doesn't get on the field.
Yep.
Khalil Shakir is kind of in the same boat. He ranked outside the top 60 in routes run last year. He was outside the top 75 in snap share at 61%.
And that's the other difference between Zay Flowers and Khalil Shakir.
So my concern, if we're not getting on the field in 2 wide receiver sets more often, which I'm not expecting to happen because the team went out and signed a guy like Josh Palmer, and they're expecting Keon Coleman to take another step this year. They're kind of expecting those 2 guys to be the 2 receivers in those sets. Again, there's nothing wrong with the wide receiver 38 being closer to 40 than he is to 30, right? I would have a much bigger problem if we're putting him ahead of like Calvin Ridley or Jerry Jeudy because of the better offense and being the one in that offense. So I just find myself going, what if Juwan Jennings can be the wide receiver 1 in San Francisco?
Yeah, totally.
What if Deebo Samuel takes advantage of some design touches that he was getting in San Francisco, not to the same.
Fat Deebo, you see those clips today?
No, boy. Here we go.
We are just Fat Deebo, baby.
We just have no headlines. It is the middle of summer, ladies and gentlemen.
June 11th. We need something to jabber about.
Right. I just in this range, I just find myself going for paths to opportunity. And yes, like Khalil Shakir, you could say, because he did lead the team in targets, has a pretty straightforward path. I just find myself saying Diggs and Jennings and Ricky, they've got opportunity as well, but better upside. So I opt for those guys.
Sure, which I don't have a problem with at all because I do think the range of outcomes for Khalil Shakir could be knocking on the door of a top 30 wide receiver, knocking on the potentially, if you really want to get ballsy, then somewhere between 25 and 30. But the floor I think is also somewhere between wide receiver 40, 45 for him as well. So for me, I think like 38 to 40 is like the sweet spot here for Shakir. I don't necessarily want to argue him one way or the other because you're right. The other big difference between him and Zay Flowers, which again, that's why I said it's a reckless question at the top, and I knew the answer to it, but when they came out in my projections, they were so close to one another where I'm like, look, they're both on offenses that are going to spread the ball around and they're not going to have like the highest passing volume in the league, but they both get enough of the pie right around that like 21 to 23% target share where not touchdown threats either. They're just going to end up with similar stat lines. I meant it more from that perspective, people, not from the perspective in which they're on the field and playing the game. But again, I digress. If you want to draft all these players right now, we got 3 more coming up as well. You can do so over on Underdog. You can scan the QR code on the screen if you're watching over on YouTube. Otherwise, you can hear how to play with them right now as we take a quick break. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. Alrighty, we are back. We've talked about JSN, Rashee Rice, Khalil Shakir thus far. Odunze got a shout out last segment as we talked about Khalil Shakir. So we're really going to do a deep dive on Rome right now because my fantasy pros, what are we doing with Odunze at wide receiver 37? I understand he finished as a wide receiver 49 last year, but personally, I think the play caller change from Shane Waldron to Ben Johnson deserves a 12 bump rise in and of itself. Like that's without considering the rest of the context that's currently favoring Odunze. That's just me. But the Bears obviously beefed up the offensive line this offseason. They could give Caleb better support in the pocket, obviously. But the 2 things I don't think people are talking enough about right now in regards to Rome's value, the Bears quietly have some dysfunction going on right now, Ty. Luther Burden already dealing with a soft tissue injury. DJ Moore kind of acting more like Diva Moore right now. I mean, Hayden Winks brought attention to one of his responses to a reporter when asked if he had, quote, any goals for this year. DJ Moore, and I quote, says, right now, I don't have any goals because I'm still learning everything, and I don't even know if I'm going to touch the ball as much as I did some years or if I'm going to be used the same way. Rome, buddy, just keep your head down. Keep working. We're 1,000% in business here at wide receiver 37. This is such a smash spot for Rome, where I think there's no world in which he finishes outside of the top 35 wide receivers whatsoever. Like bare minimum, Rome should be wide receiver 35, and I would still say he's undervalued there.
I love Rome Odunze this year. I will be fully transparent.
Yeah.
With the state of the rushing game, like we talked about DeAndre Swift last episode and Roschon Johnson, we can all admit that's not as good as Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery in Detroit. So that leads you to believe, well, I don't know if Ben Johnson's necessarily going to rely on it as often as he did in Detroit, which means you have to throw the ball. Luther Burden, like you said, he's missing time right now and some pretty valuable time.
Valuable time.
Loveland, it's a rough time.
Yeah.
Colson Loveland as well. DJ Moore with all of his stuff, like it's going to be Rome. And again, being closer to 40 and we are to 30
is stupid, insanely stupid.
I don't understand it. And maybe it is solely because like there are still believers in DJ Moore, and that's fine. I'm not saying DJ Moore isn't going to play this year. I'm just saying he's kind of making a big deal out of a scenario in which he could probably still just be the wide receiver 1 in this offense. But continue. I don't think there's anything more I can add to this. Like Rome Odunze, the younger player, the more exciting player.
Mm-hmm.
What else are we supposed to say? Like what else should we be saying here that should make us more pessimistic on Rome Odunze, especially at the wide receiver 37?
No, because I just have more optimism to spew. Per Andrew Erickson over at Fantasy Pros, Odunze was ranked 10th in end zone targets with 14 last year, and he led the Bears in high value targets, air yards, red zone targets over the back half of last season. Problem is he only caught 3 of those end zone looks, so you can probably bank on that number going in the positive direction this year rather than regressing to the mean. I think Rome was well below the mean last year. So, yeah, not only is he going to be a great red zone target, this is just such a smash spot if DJ Moore finds a way to screw this up for himself, and if Luther Burden and Colson Love continue to miss valuable training camp time here. Ty, let's transition here to Darnell Mooney, wide receiver for the Atlanta Falcons. This is a fascinating one. I think I know which way you're going with this one, but I also thought I knew which way you're going with Khalil Shakir as well, and I was completely wrong. So Darnell Mooney, they get it right or wrong?
Well, wrong. the whole premise of the episode.
Okay, right or wrong? Yes, they got it wrong. That's literally the whole point. Idiot. Is this a positive mistake or a negative mistake on Fantasy Pros part?
Positive mistake.
There it is.
Very much in the similar vein of Odunze, where I've got some optimism and I'm slightly confused in the sense of like, why is he this low? And I get that like there's some pretty big names ahead of him. So maybe this is purely just a like, well, Darnell Mooney just kind of fits here because he can't go any lower, can't really go any higher. But I would push back and say, I think you can push Darnell Mooney a little bit higher here.
Mm-hmm.
We're coming off of a fantastic year in Darnell Mooney standards, like his best year since 2021.
in Darnell Mooney standard. Hey, that means something.
It means something. I'm just saying. I can't sit here and say,
can we create a Darnell Mooney barometer? Hey, look, in Darnell Mooney standards, he's smashing right now.
Yeah. On a scale of DeAndre Carter at the bottom to, gosh, who would be at the top here? Gross wide receiver 2. Name one. Just any random one. Luther Burden, we're tipping toward, we're on the positive
wide
scale
receiver
here.
3, but that's fine. Keep going.
Whoa, hey, Ray, whoa. You calling Darnell Mooney a wide receiver?
No. You said
brother?
Luther Burden. You said gross wide receiver 2, and said Luther Burden.
Sure.
I said he's wide receiver 3. Come on.
Yeah, sure. Sorry. So Mooney coming off of his best year since 2021. He was a wide receiver 36 in points per game. The dude was a fringe wide receiver 3 flex play on a weekly basis. Ahead of Khalil Shakir, I might add. Just saying. Yeah. Little to no change in this offense. Yeah, like it's Michael Penix now under center instead of Kirk Cousins. But Bijan's still there. Kyle Pitts is still there. Drake London is still there. Ray McLeod is still there, wide receiver 3. So little to no change in this offense. And he was a wide receiver 40 in usage on a per game basis. Yet he's still ranked somewhere closer to 50. I get he's the number 2 guy behind Drake London and the offense goes through Bijan Robinson. But this offense last year was top 10 in total plays ran, 13th in points per game, and 6th in total yards per game. There is plenty of opportunity in this offense for Darnell Mooney to still have a sizable role here. And I'll be honest, it just feels like we're assuming that everything is going to Drake London and Bijan Robinson in this offense, when that's what happened last year. So I'm not sure why we're putting him lower than where he finished last year. And I get Darnell Mooney is not a popular name by any means, but at the same time, like we do just kind of need to understand the circumstance that he finds himself in. So again, I don't mind pushing Darnell Mooney for sure ahead of the Colts wide receivers with their quarterback uncertainty right now.
Oh, fascinating. Okay.
I would put him ahead of Cooper Kupp because
I would as well.
Who knows what we're getting from Cooper Kupp this year? But then we're getting into the Ricky Pearsall, Stephon Diggs, like those receivers that we were talking about with Khalil Shakir. I would definitely put Mooney in that range of receiver. So again, I don't understand exactly why the pessimism or why we're putting him closer to 50. When again, like there is opportunity for Darnell Mooney to still be a really, really nice piece in fantasy.
I think maybe the big concern is that we still kind of have somewhat of a mystery box with Michael Penix. We got a handful of games at the end of last season, obviously. And I said this about Penix coming out of college as well. A lot of people were saying Michael Penix is an accurate passer. The problem that I saw, though, which I'm like, okay, I can see why people would say he's an accurate passer, but I did not see any precision on his tape. The upside, though, that Penix gives you is that he's kind of got that F it we ball mentality. Multiple people have said like Penix is low-key has a little bit of Jameis Winston dog in him, right? Where it's like, I'm not afraid to grip it and rip it. And we'll chuck the ball around the yard if we want to. So that's like, I think, actually pro Darnell Mooney, who wide receiver 37 in points per game last year, wide receiver 31 finish with kind of a, no offense to Kirk Cousins, love him, but bum Achilles Kirk Cousins last year, who just looked miserable the first 5-6 weeks of the season, got worse as the season went on. I don't quite understand why Darnell Mooney just falls back closer to 50 than he does, 40. I'm with you. I think he belongs more in that like 42 to 46 range. I'd keep Josh Downs ahead of him though. Michael Pittman I'd put behind Mooney, but I'd keep Josh Downs ahead of Mooney. They're going to be in the same range though. Both are guys who I see kind of in that like 40 to 46 range, and you could probably shift them in any order. That's kind of where I lie, and I think Michael Penix is actually probably more of a pro for Darnell Mooney this year than he is a negative, which it seems like it's almost being interpreted as a negative. I don't quite understand that. There's no competition added here.
Nothing. The guy was top 20 in air yards and deep targets last year. He was top 30 in receiving yards and targets. Like, I don't understand what people are seeing with Darnell Mooney. Again, it may totally be because it's not a popular name, and if that's the case, I will take as many Darnell Mooney shares as I can then, because
right.
I'm going to trust what I saw last year from Atlanta's offense. I don't want to say fully repeating, but being pretty close to what we were seeing last year.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see where he ends up shaking out in my draft guide, which, hey, if you do want to get your hands on that, that'll be dropping July 1st. We'll be putting a $10 price tag on that. You'll get projections, full statted out projections from myself, from Tyler, from Cameron. You'll get our consensus in there. You'll get individual team profile pages as well. You'll get different lists of breakouts and busts. You'll get a video archive as well. That'll all kind of be slow released throughout the course of July, because we got a lot of work that we want to put into that. Obviously, the video archive takes time to build, but if you do want to get your hands on that, again, make sure you subscribe here and hit that notification bell, because we're going to be talking about it all the way up to the release, and we'll let you know as soon as it drops on July 1st. So make sure you mark your calendars for that release date. We got one more player to talk about here, Ty. And look, I was starting to come around on Chris Olave. Seriously, he's going as a wide receiver 37 over on Underdog. I said, all right, enough's enough. I think I don't mind Chris Olave at this price point, actually. But there is still no world where I want to draft him as the wide receiver 28 where Fantasy Pros has him currently ranked. I completely understand. He's the alpha of this offense, and Rashid Shaheed is coming off of a torn meniscus. But do we really have that much confidence in Tyler Shuck? Ask yourself that question. How much confidence do you have in a Louisville quarterback you didn't hear about, unless if you're a college football junkie, before this offseason? Go watch the tape if you don't want any more confidence. Mike Clay has this offense projected to rank 32nd in the entire league and 29th in passing touchdowns. Like, I would just much rather take the shots on wide receiver 2 on significantly better offenses in this range who are going after Chris Olave, the Jordan Addisons of the world. I'm willing to take a shot on Jalen Waddle. God forbid, Rome Odunze. Tet McMillan is at 36. But look, if Chris Olave was a Carolina Panther and Tet McMillan was a New Orleans Saint, Chris Olave would be, he'd be sitting right in this range, and I'd feel much better about that. And I would even say he might be slightly undervalued. But we got him at 28 with Tyler Shuck. There's just no world in which I'm interested in this price point, in this ranking whatsoever. Like, even if we get Spencer Rattler for 6 games, Ty, like, sorry, wasn't too encouraged by what I saw there last year either. So zero interest in Chris Olave, wide receiver 28. I don't get it. It feels like we're just trying to force a wide receiver 1 here because he's the wide receiver 1.
Who says it's going to be Spencer Rattler or
Jake
Tyler
Hayner?
Shuck?
Hey,
Yeah, hey,
Jake Hayner probably doesn't get any better.
we're horrible.
Kirk Cousins, anybody? Can we get Kirk Cousins to
interdivision
the
trade?
Saints?
Whoa.
Can we get that? It's not going to
mean,
happen. But
can I just say real quick? What a wild situation that I've never seen happen before with a starting quarterback that literally gets stabbed in the back with the Michael Penix pick, then plays the year and then goes into the offseason as the clear backup and is okay with the backup role. Like
willingly showing up to OTAs. Yeah.
I don't understand it. Anyway, back to Chris Olave and the Saints. This just feels silly. I'll be honest. This just feels like we need to put him higher up because he's a more recognizable name. I'll be honest.
He's a good player.
He's a good player.
I love Chris Olave. I do. We don't got to put him here just for the sake of putting him here, though. I'm sorry. Talent doesn't win out in this situation. Not with.
No. I mean, I'm taking George Pickens. I'll be honest.
Oh, yeah. George Pickens. Yeah, that's the other name I didn't list there. Yeah, George Pickens I'm taking ahead of Olave, too. Yeah.
But if you force me to take a wide receiver 1 on a really bad offense, I'm still taking Jerry Jeudy and I'm still taking Calvin Ridley.
I'm taking Ted McMillan.
Yeah.
With Bryce Young, who looked good at the end of last season.
Hey, dog. Hey, don't sleep on Carolina this year. I'm just saying, don't sleep on Carolina this year. Anyway, I can't get behind this one. And you can see too on Fantasy Pros, like the highest ranking for a player and the worst. And somehow, some way, like Chris Olave is like 25, like his highest ranking. His lowest one is at 46.
Oh, okay,
and I'm like,
more appropriate.
46.
Well, I can't say more appropriate. 46 is pretty cruel. 46 is pretty cruel.
That should tell you, though, that people really can't make up their mind on where to put Chris Olave. So they say talent, name, whatever it is. 28 just doesn't compute in my head, though. Like,
no.
So yes, I'm with you. Not to say that like I won't be taking any Chris Olave, but it's definitely not going to be anywhere near this. It's definitely going to be closer to 40 than it is to 30.
Wide receiver 37, I'll mix in my shares. That's where I've landed because originally I'm like, I don't want a dude who, if he's one hit away, and I didn't even bring up the concussion concerns, right? Where it's like, I don't want a dude if he's one hit away. Like I could just be drafting a 0 after week 6, but yeah, I've come around a little bit where I'm like, okay, I'm over exaggerating a little bit. Wide receiver 37, I can make a click there, but 10 spots higher, absolutely not.
I mean, can I just say though, I'm not even sure if I still want to do it at wide receiver 37.
Okay,
just because at that point
you're in the wide receiver 46 camp.
Sure. If I had to choose a camp, I would say
if I had to choose 46 or 28, I'm choosing 46.
I mean, because when you're just building a team, and again, wide receiver 37 is the underdog ranking, so that's currently
which is
where
not
people value him
on YouTube. Yeah,
right. We're talking like early 40s here. Ricky Pearsall, Matthew Golden, who is a very strong candidate for mine because for whatever reason that dude is buried on the ECR, and I don't.
Where's he at? Where's he at?
He's like 65.
Oh,
60, yeah. Like it's almost like.
Let me. Oh gosh, yeah, he's 65. He's behind Kyle Williams. And
so
Hopkins.
Yeah, I tried to leave
Quentin
rookies
Johnston
out. Yeah.
And Adam Thielen and Cedric Tillman and Romeo Dott and Marvin Mims and Marquise Brown and Jalen McMillan and Rashad Bateman and Luther Burden and Rashid Shaheed and Christian Kirk.
I think I'll be honest. I think
can
we could have.
we get like a quick I think we need a new graphic here, Cameron. Can you put a graphic in here? We're gonna Matthew Golden. What are we doing? What are we doing, Fantasy Pros?
I tried to leave rookies out because I was like, every single rookie seems to be way off here.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
so
10 McMillan, 36. That was immediately the flag of like, what are we doing?
what are we doing?
Golden at 65.
Yeah, that one's scary. that one is. You can like Chris Olave, the player, but maybe it's just my way of saying if I'm going to have a piece of the Saints offense, it's going to be Alvin Kamara. Yeah. And I'm not even that positive. Well, I'll be honest. I'm not even sure I like it that much because I wonder if this is the year where we kind of see a fall off from Kamara just because everything else around him just isn't good. And it's more so just
last year, though. That's what we said last year.
But at least he had
not to get into a Kamara debate, but
yeah, this is about Chris Olave. So look, you can like Olave. It's going to be a pass for us every single time. If he's closer to 30 than he is to 40.
Yeah, 100% agree. 100% agree on that. Yeah, again, Olave going to be very curious to see where he actually falls in my final projections because I do not have high hopes for whoever will be throwing him the football this season. We'll wrap it out there, though, Ty. If you want to give us a follow on our other socials as well, FFL is on Twitter. The FFL is on Instagram. Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook and TikTok. If you want our YouTube Shorts content as well, Fantasy Football Shorts. Personal socials, I am at Lucas Wenzel on X. Tyler FFF for Tyler. Cameron isn't here. It's Camlaw FFF for Cameron. Tyler _Platt for Ty. See, I get screwed up when Cameron isn't here. But I will say, it's kind of nice when he doesn't have his opinions meddle in the midst of ours here. And we can just have a back and forth dialogue. And it's not somebody mucking up a third opinion. It's like, well, I don't know, you guys. Like, maybe Zay Flowers actually isn't very good. We all know, Cameron. We all agree.
Well, I'm somewhat down the middle, actually. I don't know if I agree with either of you guys.
I actually think Kyle Williams is the Randy Moss of Calvin Johnson's.
Oh, gosh. Don't spoil it for me. Come on now.
Oh man, thanks for tuning in again. If you're not subscribed here, make sure you do that. Hit the notification bell as well. What do we have next week? We have breakout running backs and wide receivers next week. We're gonna have a lot of fun predicting who could potentially be the next breakout running back 1 or wide receiver 1 star in fantasy football. So make sure you tune in for those next week. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy. Deuces.